Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another episode of Added Time, answering your questions that you kindly submitted for today's video. But before we get into any of that, I want to ask you guys, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also hit the like button if you're enjoying the content, because it helps out the channel as well. So let's get into your questions. Firstly, here from Bagavath, who asks, we now have a settled 11 with congested fixtures coming up. How do you think Lamps can rotate Chilwell, Ziyech, Mount, Thiago and Kante without affecting the results, as they seem to be very important with the way we play? The quality is too high to be rotated. This was always going to be one of the biggest challenges of this season, not only for Frank Lampard, but for many coaches, especially ones at the top clubs of European football, how difficult it is, how congested it is. I think you've really seen that in recent weeks, and I think it's been difficult. And I actually think Frank has managed it pretty well, to be honest, in terms of rotating, especially managing both N'Golo Kante and Thiago Silva and rotating them when need be. I think the positive thing that we have in the Champions League is 5 subs, and that really helps Frank out. I think you saw that not only against Krasnodar but also against Rennes, where the likes of Thiago Silva and Kante, who are big players for Lampard, were rotated, were brought off the pitch quite early in that game, and Frank could then rotate there and keep them fresh, because there was a short amount of time between the Rennes game at home and Sheffield United on Saturday. He's going to need to keep doing it. I absolutely understand, there's going to be no real dead rubber games unless, we get to the final Champions League game of the group and we're qualified and we're top or whatever, and then maybe he can rotate from the start. But it's about managing those players quite well. The concern is at the moment the international break. We saw last time when the likes of Thiago Silva went away to play for Brazil, he couldn't play against Southampton. So that's going to be a difficulty once again, because these are big players for Chelsea, for Lampard, and he's starting to find that consistent 11 that we've craved for so long. And you don't want to see that disrupted too much, but it's also about finding that balance. I think what helps Chelsea is we do have a bigger squad, and it's not like the players in every position to rotate and come in are awful. I think Antonio Rudiger showed his importance still to Chelsea at times. In the Krasnodar game, still has got quality. For Fikayo, Tomori, I think there's concerns in positions like left back. Frank not having much trust in the sort of the fullback options there, in terms of if Chilwell has to be rotated, Marcos Alonso, Emerson. I mean, the quality, there's a massive drop off there, and that is a concern. But this is why you have a big squad, and this is what Lampard has to do as a coach. So it's going to be difficult, but I think I still think that Lampard is going to manage this quite well. I think we have enough players to rotate in and out, and I think mostly what you'll see is he'll utilise the 5 sub rule in the Champions League. I think most times in the Premier League, hopefully he'll be able to keep his strongest sort of 11 out there. Of course, injury depending, form and all that good stuff. Jervis asks, how do you view Frank bringing Rudiger back into the fold? Is it one of them keeps his value up decisions, or has he decided he doesn't need one of Christensen or Tomori? I've got a question on Tomori, so I'll focus a little bit more on Christensen and also Rudiger. I think it is the first sort of suggestion you make. I think it is keeping his value up, to be honest, because Chelsea could loan him or could sell him in January potentially, waiting to see what happens there, because we have got 5 centre-backs. So I think one of them has to be off in January. I'd be stunned if we get to the end of the January transfer window with so many players, so many centre-backs not playing any sort of football at the moment, like Tomori and Christensen, and they're still all here for the rest of the season. I know it's a weird year in terms of the pandemic, in terms of finances, but still, I imagine one of them will be off. I think that, Rudiger, the fact he was so close to leaving, I don't think that's going to change. I think that's just sort of kicking it down the road in terms of him exiting Chelsea. And I think Lampard's probably looking at it and going, he's a popular figure in the dressing room. Let's utilise him while I still have him, get that value up, so then when we sell him, we'll get a decent fee for him. He's not an awful player. I'm sure there'll be some club, maybe in Germany, he could return to Germany or somewhere else that would buy him from Chelsea. So there's that as well. I'm intrigued to see Christensen, the future of Christensen, because he's right out in the cold at the moment. And to be honest, in terms of my order of centre-backs, he's last, in terms of who I'd have in the squad. And it seems Lampard feels the same, because even, Tomori sometimes on the bench now, Rudiger's getting in front of both Tomori and Christensen. So I think Christensen's future is probably in most doubt. But as we've seen with Rudiger, that situation could change. Frank may rotate and bring back Christensen, but I think it's most likely out of the centre-backs there that Christensen may actually be leaving in January. Those are just my thoughts on it, but I think Rudiger will still be leaving Chelsea sooner rather than later. Michael De Santa asks, do you think we sign Silva Silva on for another year or go for another world-class centre-back in the summer or January window? I think in a moment you have to go to the first option, Thiago Silva staying at Chelsea for another year. I think this is the issue we knew instantly when we signed Thiago Silva. It was going to be a short-term solution for a long-term problem. At the moment, it's looking like an incredible short-term solution. He's adding everything we sort of wanted in that area. Of course, I think that with players of his age, it can go just like that. In terms of what you have, what you don't have anymore. We've seen this with centre-backs before, and you can deteriorate very quickly at the top level of the game. At the moment, he looks absolute class. He still looks world-class. He looks like one of the best centre-backs in the Premier League, and luckily we have him. How long that will last for, we're going to have to wait and see. I hope that Chelsea are thinking about that, whether it's a case of, say, Fikayo Tomori, developing at Chelsea, or Malang Sarr potentially develops rapidly on loan at, say, Porto or next season as well. I think it's more likely that he gets one more year. It's hard to know where we'll be, say, come May or, even beyond that, who becomes available. Chelsea have become very proactive in the transfer window of lining up deals and then getting them done very swiftly. We don't know. I mean, Declan Rice, as has been pointed out before, although he plays mainly as a CDM, there are some people in the club, and I think Frank as well sees him potentially as a centre-back. We've spoken a lot about Ethan Ampadu as well. So there are options there, maybe internally, or players like Declan Rice who could fill that void eventually. But I think at the moment, you've got to be pleased with what Thiago Silva's doing. And I think a motivated player who wants to get to the World Cup in 2 years' time, I'm sure Thiago Silva would want to stay at Chelsea. TY7 asks, how can Havertz recover his Leverkusen form, like scoring and assisting? Does he fit the system? He seems a bit too isolated and doesn't really have the freedom to play his game. I think that's a bit harsh. I did a video, a Let's Talk Chelsea episode, where I looked at an article from The Guardian. I think it was from Who Scored, and they were looking at his numbers and how in his career, Kai Havertz has always got stronger post-Christmas. That's always been his career so far. He seems to always improve in the final stretch of a season. Let's hope that comes true again for Chelsea, because I think having players of his quality leveling up at the back end of the season, the business end of the season, is so key, getting your best players in form around that time. Whether it will change because we don't have a winter break in this country, you always have to sort of take that into consideration. In Germany, they do have a pretty big winter break, and then you can sort of recharge your batteries as a player. Unfortunately, in this country, we don't have that, and it always seems to take a toll on players you bring into the league more than, some players can adapt well to it, others really struggle. So we'll have to wait and see how Havertz adapts to that. I think he's starting to fit in. I think that you'll start to see, as we've seen with other players, now Lampard seems to have a settled system. I think that will naturally just go into some of the players starting to elevate their games. I think that Kai hasn't performed poorly so far this season. I think he's starting to find that flow, within his game of fluidity. I think you saw against Burnley, brief glimpses of the player we're getting here. I've always said it, this is a long-term signing. This is not a short-term solution like Thiago Silva. And to expect Kai to be instantly world-class within like 2 months, I think was always going to be unrealistic, especially for the type of player he is. He's going to become the creative hub, we hope, of Chelsea's midfield. So I think, taking time. And as well, you got to remember as well, we switched from a formation where he was like the number 10, sort of in the 4-2-3-1 to a 4-3-3. But I actually think that's going to help Kai's game, because I think having Mount alongside him will get him into better space and really help Chelsea's attack. So I'd be patient with Havertz, really. And as we've seen with other signings so far this season, really excelling, and I think Kai will be the same. Let's hope he recovers from COVID, can get back after the international break and start firing again, because I think the quality obviously is there. Hopefully we'll see it more consistently as he gets used to being a Chelsea player. Kevin Joseph asks, do you think we should bench Tammy and start Werner in the middle so Cho can start on the wing? Or are you happy with Tammy down the middle and Werner on the wing? In my opinion, Cho should be starting as Pulisic is injured, but the Tammy and Werner combo has worked well so far. Yeah, I don't see Frank changing Tammy starting and Werner on the left anytime soon. The performances, the consistency of results, 4 wins in a row, he ain't going to do it, especially with Tammy's, sort of form and productivity at the moment, not only in terms of scoring goals, as we saw at the weekend and against Rennes, but his productivity in setting up fellow attackers. He seems to link so well. He seems to have a chemistry with his fellow attackers. He's adding that sort of physicality you want as a focal point, and I think that's elevating the games of not only Hakim Ziyech, as we saw on Saturday, but also the likes of Timo Werner to make runs in behind. I think Tammy's not getting dropped, and he shouldn't be dropped, and it's the same with Timo Werner. You know, Timo Werner is scoring goals regularly now for Chelsea. He's doing it consistently. You know, even though he's not maybe starring in a game, he's still putting the ball in the back of the net, and I think you have to be happy with that. It's hard for Hudson-Odoi. It's hard for other players to get into the team, but Lampard's not going to change a winning formula, and I don't think any of us realistically should expect that and be calling for that, to be honest, because although I think Hudson-Odoi in brief glimpses has shown positivity and positive moments and encouraging moments for Chelsea, especially against Krasnodar the other week when he got that start, no, I don't think we should be changing it. And I think Tammy absolutely deserves to be starting. And Werner, he's got the versatility to play on the left and still be an effective player. Akash asks, have you noticed Werner's inability to dribble past defenders? He can run past people, but he is not a trickster like Hazard. No, and he never was going to be that player. You know, he's not a Christian Pulisic. He's not a Hakim Ziyech. And I don't think you should expect that of him just because he plays that wide. If you watch Timo Werner, he's a goal scorer. He's a different type of goal scorer to your Diego Costa, to Olivier Giroud, to Tammy Abraham, to Drogba, you know, to the normal strikers we've seen at Chelsea over the years. I think that was always the big thing for Werner. He's not going to be that player, and I don't think that's a detriment to him. He's a goal scorer. He's a clinical goal scorer. If you get him into the right areas, he is devastating, as we've seen so far for Chelsea. So I don't think that's a knock on him, to be honest. That's nothing that concerns me. That's nothing that surprises me. I don't expect Timo Werner. His game is not about taking the ball from a deep position, and as Hazard could do so wonderfully, just take out 3 or 4 players. He's never going to do that, but that doesn't make him not a brilliant player for Chelsea. I think it's about getting him into effective positions. It's getting the ball behind the defence. He's running onto it. Then he can be absolutely deadly, as we've seen so far. So no, it's not an issue for me. I just think that's the expectation you got. We got a clinical striker who scored a bundle of goals. That's his job on the pitch. And so far, he's doing that for Chelsea, so I'm not complaining. Molasane asks, what's your take on a 4-3-3 formation? It seems to be working. Any weaknesses on it? Ziyech is world-class. Absolutely, he's world-class. I think it's just elevating the games of every player at the moment. I think it just clicks. It seems to be the formation that has unlocked our team, basically, especially in attack. You know, I think you started to see the defence start to get more structured and balanced and rigid, especially in those games against Sevilla and Man United. But as we saw that final 20 minutes against Krasnodar, it seems that the 4-2-3-1 is a bit of a compromise for Frank Lampard. And I always felt this season, you cannot have a situation, you know, all the expectation and excitement around the players we bought and the players we already had, the attacking players. You don't want to see these players restricted, and it seems like that lets them loose. I think the biggest test for Frank Lampard and this 4-3-3 formation, mainly, you know, you look at midfield, I think instantly we think about that DM position, which has been such a problem for Chelsea recently. N'Golo Kante at the base against Tottenham, right? I think Tottenham is going to be the big litmus test. Of course, we have 2 games before then, the dreaded trip to St James's Park against Newcastle and also Rennes away. But I think Tottenham at home is going to give you a really good indication. And I also think not only Tottenham, but Leeds the following week. 2 teams that are going to give Chelsea a lot of problems, going to ask Chelsea a lot of serious questions. And then after those couple games, I think you can make a firm judgment on whether this is the main formation, this is the big solution for Chelsea. Whether Frank Lampard will sort of compromise in those games like we saw against Man United, will we switch to a back 3 against Tottenham, which worked so well last season in both Premier League games? Would he do the same against Leeds, potentially to restrict their sort of strengths? We have to wait and see, but I think at the moment it just seems to be elevating our game, elevating the players within it, and that makes me very happy at the moment watching Chelsea, because it's a wonderful performance on Saturday. 2 wonderful back-to-back performances in the Premier League, and Chelsea look solid, we look balanced, but now we look to have brilliant creativity in the likes of Ziyech moving forward. But that is it for this episode of Added Time. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch it. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea. Have a great day, and I'll see you again.